All right. Welcome to the first edition of the Collective podcast. We have with us Trey Hopson, Mike Tillery, Rodney Saucier Sr. Trey Trey goes by Trey. Mike goes by Mizzo, and Rod. I guess I didn't say Rodney, so Rod goes by Rod. So, um, Trey, why don't you kick it off and tell us about Trey?
Well, I've been following sports for a while, a long while. I play sport, huge basketball fanatic. Um, I love football as well. Um, I'm into baseball, but I'm more into just one team, and I've been a Dodger fan forever and ever. So I follow the Dodgers, and whoever's playing the Dodgers doesn't really matter unless Dodgers beat them. That's recently I've gotten into hockey. I go to a few Kings games here and now and whatnot, but my strong point would be basketball. I'm a huge Kobe fan, huge Magic Johnson Laker fan, Laker legend. But I respect all the other teams and know about their players and so forth like that. And now I got a little one that loves basketball, and he's a little 4-year-old phenom, and you'll be seeing a lot of him.
Nope. Nope. Mizzo.
My name is Michael Tillery. Call me Mizzo. I've been at this for almost 20 years. Uh, Eagles, Sixers, Phillies, a little bit of Flyers, some Villanova and Temple. Um, I've kind of almost tried to branch over to more creative writing. I got a book coming out soon that's a horror flick
Wow.
that I've been basically putting all of my efforts in. It's basically I was married to a white woman, and she was gorgeous, right? We bought a Jeep, and when we would put the top down, we would get harassed. This was around the time of O.J. Simpson. So, me being an athlete, she pitched for Arizona in the College World Series, in shape, and we would get harassed all the time. So, one day I had a dream that we were kidnapped from some of these people and taken to this cabin, raped her, raped me, killed me. My blood seeps down to the floor of this cabin that happened to be the burial of a slave rebellion leader. He comes back to life. We go out and kill white supremacy, no matter what it is, even if it's in the hood.
Oh,
And
Wow.
I at the end, I'm able to travel through time, and the book basically ends with me coming up to the Ivory Coast and hearing French voices, seeing torches, and I look at the camera, and that's the end. It was the first abduction of slaves from Africa. So in between all that, I mean, it's vicious killing. You know what I mean? It's take hold no holds barred, and I feel like I have to not edit this to make it happen. It's the metaphor for us trying to get around the perils of slavery the right way without being subservient. So just see Nat Turner as a superhero in a sense. Um, so that's when I've been dedicating all my time to. I've done a podcast. AC, were you on my podcast at all?
I wasn't. I wasn't.
Okay. Well, I did that for about 4 years. I worked with Chuck D, a Public Enemy. Um, my claim to fame basically is interviewing Chuck and Julius Erving for 2 hours on my podcast, and it was basically the highlight of my sports career and probably my life because I'm a fan of both. Doc being my favorite pet player, especially that dunk on Coop, Trey.
Are you doing that, huh? That's what we're doing?
Yeah. So I mean,
Oh, whoa.
I'm really
Wow.
trying to do something. AC knows this. AC it basically gave me one of my best memories when covering what was the 2008 Finals, LA and Boston, and I was able to cover that first game, the Paul Pierce wheelchair game, and looked on the floor and saw Doc talking to Kobe. And I was interviewing Bob Ryan in the Boston Globe at the time. I went down to the floor and was able to speak to Kobe and Doc while Andrew Bynum was under the basket mad because he was injured. So just the visuals of all that, so seeing the Sam Jones and the Bill Russells and the JoJo Whites, and had dinner with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that day. It was great. And I'm very grateful for AC for giving me that opportunity to put me in that space because it's born a lot of creativity and also giving me a sense of what I should get back to this game outside of the snark of the last decade.
No doubt. No doubt. Wow, that's powerful.
That's awesome.
Rod.
And I did.
What up?
You like the Eagles? I rocked them too.
Well, I'm not really I can't. After they got rid of Donovan, I was done with them.
It's a good time to leave.
That's funny.
Yeah, I could speak to players leaving and me leaving with them. So I'll get to that when it's my turn. Go ahead, Rod.
All right. I'm Rod Saucier Sr. Uh, Ironically, I grew up a fan of everything Philly because I loved Dr. J. I loved Harold Carmichael and Wilbert Montgomery for the Eagles. He was like the first big receiver I had ever seen, and I wanted to be like 6'5", so I could push people off the line of scrimmage and catch a bomb and score and push them down at the end. I was diehard Eagles. And as I got a little older and started seeing sports a little different, I'm like, whoa, now Jerry Rice is in the league. And it's like, early to mid 80s. And I'm like, Jerry Rice is in the league. And was just like diehard Jerry Rice fan. Like I couldn't miss a 49ers game. But my heart has always been Raiders. I'm a Raiders fan, win or lose. I do still love certain players from other teams and would pay to see certain players play. And knowing that my team is probably going to get smashed, but I'm a diehard Raiders, Lakers, Dodgers, Kings fan, boxing fan. I think probably the only sport it's hard for me to get into is UFC, and because it's brutal.
Yeah, that is brutal.
It's brutal, and I always picture myself in those situations. And if we're fighting where we're almost bare knuckles, we got to fight for real. Like the the rules can't apply. You're not gonna like choke me out and just beat me unconscious, and I can't, bite you in the neck or nothing. I have to sit there and take it until the ref says he submits.
And then
Nah,
give you a hug afterwards.
right? And nah, can't do it. So
Or
UFC is still a struggle for me. But as far as sports, growing up, football was always my first love until I got about eighth or ninth grade and realized, wait a minute, I could dunk. I could dunk at an early age on a regulation court. saw the little cheers that would come with that. So I'm like, oh, maybe basketball is not so bad. And I could not take hits. So started kind of gravitating to basketball somewhere around 13, 14. And it just kind of, the love just took off from there. And, and, nowadays, as I'm older, I look at sports completely different. I analyze the plays, what they're running, why they're running it at the time they run it. And then I look at the macro picture of how it affects black athletes when they make certain moves versus white athletes. Is it good for us versus them? And so a lot of people say I'm kind of stuck in the old way because I like balance. And I hate to see the NBA nowadays where they're just chucking up threes,
Me too, brother.
where analytics has completely just taken over sports to the point where for me to watch, it's not fun anymore. Like there were times where I couldn't miss Magic Johnson playing. I had to go see it.
Right.
And I had to see what David Robinson or against Shaq was going to look like, what Shaq and Olajuwon would look like, or Robinson and Olajuwon, or whatever the case. But I had to see certain matchups, and now you don't get those matchups. Everything is based on a scheme now, so you don't see you don't see Kawhi on LeBron the whole game. You'll see them match up here and there because everything is switch, switch, switch. The ball swings this way. Don't stay with your man now. Just switch. We can switch that. So it takes out the competitiveness for me because I always wanted to see Reggie Miller face Michael Jordan the whole 48 minutes. Or Michael Jordan face Ricky Pierce the whole 48 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Or Dr. J and Bernard King face each other the whole 48 minutes. I don't want to see Dr. J shooting over John Concac. That I mean, like, that's not fun. You want to see the best matchup. You want to see young Kobe going at older MJ the whole game. And now all of that is lost. It's just like whoever the ball ends up with and takes that shot, whoever's defending them, okay, we'll give that bucket to you. And football, same thing. Still schemes. Baseball analytics. It's not so much schemes for baseball because now they have more. What do you call that? Where they rotate the defense based on the percentages. Shifts. Which is, for baseball, which is not a bad thing. Because if you can't hit left field, you just can't hit left field.
Right.
But when it gets to a point where they're talking about shrinking the strike zone, they've already made the ballparks smaller and more compact, so more balls are leaving the yard. It takes the fun out. I mean, you kind of leaning right. You lean more for offense, and we're getting to the point where we're getting rid of defense. And there should be balance. There should be great defenders. There should be great offensive players. We should have both. We shouldn't just have it leaning to one side. So I get ticked off about that, but because I officiate along with AC, I love being on the court. I love being on the football field. And that's a whole different story. But the love part of sports is not lost. It's just the love for the way things are done is lost. I guess you could say in a nutshell.
Wow. So can't wait to actually get into the podcast with you guys after those intros where I know that people are starving to hear what you guys have to say. I know I am. I'll be as brief as possible with my intro. AC, Anthony Carter, Tony Carter, byline Ace and Q Carter. Um, I grew up playing sports. I played football, basketball, and baseball in high school and before that. When I got to college at UCLA, I became a journalist, and my the first piece I ever wrote was a news piece on a political prisoner by the name of Geronimo G. Jaga Pratt. And I wrote this piece for NOMO, the African People's News Magazine, which was the black, the African American, the black newspaper on campus, and that was the original minority news magazine in the country, student-run news magazine in the country. And once I wrote that piece and got feedback from people, they really enjoyed it, and I was encouraged to write more. And so there was an opening for a sports writer at NOMO, and so I tried my hand at writing sports. Fell in love with it. Picked up some really good mentors and launched. I guess that was '92. That launched my journalism career there at UCLA, and I moved up the ranks at UCLA. I became sports editor of NOMO. Then I became a contributor to the Daily Bruin, which is the daily paper at UCLA. Then a staff writer. Then a columnist, and then an editor, um, an associate editor. So fun times, and then I branched out. I wrote for the Source magazine, the Source Sports, King magazine. I covered the U.S. Open for the Riverside Press Enterprise. Um, Started writing quite a bit for the Black Voice News, which was edited by Leland Stein the third, who's since left California and gone out to Detroit, going back home to Detroit, I should say. Um, just a lot of people helped me along the way. Wrote sports for the LA Sentinel, became sports editor of a wire service called HG Star One News, which really focuses on providing content for Black newspapers around the country. And for HG Star One News, that's where I pretty much did most of my damage, covering 10 NBA Finals, 7 Super Bowls, 1 World Series, a couple of NCAA Final Fours, the '99 Women's Final Four, and just a number of other one-off events. And then I've been able to get some people in the mix through the years. So it's been a good run as a journalist. I've been just enthralled by the idea of regular people. I shouldn't say regular people, but humans being able to do the things that they do on the field, on the court, on the diamond, whatever it may, on the ice, whatever it may be. It's amazing, and I love the fact that more and more representation is coming to those that were underrepresented when I started writing. And I started writing women's sports because there wasn't really, well, there definitely wasn't an equal voice, but there wasn't much of a voice for women's sports at all. And I wanted to bring that to the table. So, and I enjoyed women's sports back then, and that's grown throughout. So again, I've had a good run as a writer, as a fan, lifelong Laker fan, and lifelong 49er fan. Shout out to my squad. We lost in the Super Bowl. Um, Fell a little bit short, but man, I love my 49ers and my Lakers. My baseball, and I'm a Kings fan. So hey babe, I'm working. My baseball story is a little different. I've mostly throughout the years been a fan of people. And when I like a cluster of people, then I generally like their team. So when you're looking at the late '80s, we're talking about Ricky Henderson, Dave Stewart, Dennis Eckersley, cats like that. And so it's like, yo, let's roll with the Oakland A's. Just before that, you're like, wow, look at this phenom, Doc Gooden, Darryl Strawberry. Darryl Strawberry's from here, from LA. Wow, let's roll with the Mets. So I was really a fan of the Mets and the A's in the late '80s. And so when you look at that disabled guy, Kirk Gibson, hitting that horrible home run for the Dodgers against the A's off of Eckersley, that was really tough for me because I was an A's fan at the time. But anyway, I was always a fan of players, right? So fast forward to '97, Pedro Martinez is my favorite player. He's an Expo. He's trying to find a home. And he goes. I said, wherever he goes, I go. So he goes to the Boston Red Sox, 1997. And I'm like, man, I think this is the most racist town in sports. Hate the Celtics. Didn't really care about the Red Sox one way or another, but I know that in '86 when they lost to the Mets, I know that in the Bill Buckner game that Roger Clemens lost, Oil Can Boyd, who's a black pitcher, was supposed to start that game, but they moved him off to pitch Clemens. And I'm not saying that Clemens lost that game because clearly Bill Buckner did, but and let's give the Mets credit for beating them, but it gave me my first look at, or an early look at, what I felt to be discrimination in sports. And so I always associated Boston with being a racist town. So it was really weird for me to become a Red Sox fan. And I had to make it clear to people. Like when I was rolling with J.A. Adande right when it happened, and he was like, "Why would you do that?" And I said, "Well, it's Pedro. I'm rolling with Pedro." And he was like, "Yeah, but what else? Look at what else is involved in that." And I was like, "Hey, I'm making it clear to y'all. I'm not a fan of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm not a fan of the New England Patriots, the Boston Bruins. I still hate the Boston Celtics. It's just the Red Sox." And I was able to compartmentalize that. And so that was a good run for me. And I'm leading up to something because I spent 23 years as a Red Sox fan. I got to go to Fenway Park. I saw Pedro pitch. 2004 was amazing. October 17th, October 18th, October 19th, October 20th, when we ran the table on the Yankees after being down 3-0 and walked them down, and then just dismantled the Cardinals in the World Series. That was great. It was great. 04, 07, 13, 19. Just being involved with that squad. Now Trey talked earlier. No, was it Rod? Rod. No, it was Mizzo. He talked about McNabb leaving. Well, for me, they let Pedro go. As a free agent after the World Series. And I thought about leaving the Red Sox then, but I was like, nah, I'm too embedded in this team. Like I love them too much. Like I've been on the roller coaster ride, and I've been involved in the curse and all of that. And, I was really all in. So I said, okay, I can't leave with Pedro. He left under his own volition. I hate that they didn't re-sign him, but it was just time. And I said, but if they do this kind of thing again, I'm probably going to go. Fast forward to me having a daughter who's 2 years old, and I'm raising her a Dodger fan as it is. I love Dave Roberts because of what he did for the Red Sox. Funny because he was a Dodger first, and then they traded him to the Red Sox. I love what he did as a Red Sox, and so raising my daughter as a Dodger fan. Then I hear all this stuff about they might trade Mookie Betts, and so I told people, hey, if they trade Mookie, I'm leaving and I'm going to the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Do you know how beautiful it was that he actually went to the Dodgers? Because I didn't care where he went. I was just going to be a Dodger fan. But you actually sent Mookie and David Price? My goodness. What a package to the Dodgers. So I'm all in for the rest of my life, Dodgers. I won't leave. They can make me mad. They can upset me, but I'm all in because I
Oh, they
have
will.
three of my favorite Red Sox are there. With when you talk about Dave Roberts, you talk about Mookie Betts, and you talk about David Price. So it's exciting for me. When you talk about having met legends, Mizzo talked about this at the 2008 NBA Finals, I got a chance to uh, sit with Dave Stewart and Tony Gwynn during what World Series was that they were in, Mike? Whenever that was, whenever the Padres were in the World Series, I was there, and I got to sit with Dave Stewart and Tony Gwynn, and obviously rest in peace Tony Gwynn, but Dave Stewart, he gave me a lot of insight into things that he dealt with, both as a player and as an executive, and it's funny at the time he was an assistant GM in San Diego, and he'd been an assistant GM in Toronto, and he just never did get his full shot at GM, but just what a great guy, and that was a great time, a great experience, that whole thing. So my I've had a lot of great memories as a journalist, and obviously I love sports. Um, like Rodney said, he officiates football and basketball. I officiate football, basketball, and lacrosse, and at the collegiate level. And I've never stopped loving sports, and so I'm glad that we're here today as a collective, the collective podcast. And so now that we've all introed, let's get into it. So the coronavirus virus has obviously changed lives all around the world. It's really changed how most people in the world operate. And one of the early signs that we got of changes to come was the NBA suspending its season, not canceling, but suspending its season. At the time, you have Milwaukee with the number one record with the best record in the NBA, best in the East, obviously. You have the Lakers with the best record in the West, and you have the Lakers coming off of victories over both Milwaukee and Clippers. Clippers second in the West, and Lakers looking strong. Clippers actually looking strong leading up to the Lakers beating them. Let's get into it. What do you guys think about the NBA thus far, and what do you think it'll look like when we come back?
I had a chance to watch both games on my DVR twice since we have all this time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I thought the Lakers played much better. Well, obviously they played much better than they played the previous games against the Clippers and the Bucks. Um, the first game against Milwaukee, Greek Freak hit like 5 threes, and it wasn't even a contest. They killed the Lakers.
Right.
Um, whenever he can hit a jump shot, it's a wrap. If he can hit a jump shot, there's no one can guard him. Not 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 in the league. I don't see it. Well, I take that back. Kawhi still can, because each time he's matched up against Kawhi, Kawhi has clamped him to little of nothing. He's not even a factor. Um, but outside of Kawhi, he's unguardable if he hits a couple of outside shots. The Lakers against the Clippers was this last game was the first time, and AC, I've told you, I got so tired of seeing the Lakers get punked against the Clippers those first 2 games with Patrick Beverly guarding LeBron with
Exactly.
like a 7-inch height difference, and you're afraid to take him
Right.
and put him underneath the basket and get and ones. You don't want to post him up. Um, you settling for jump shots behind a high screen, like that is the kind of stuff with, as I call, new basketball that angers me to where it makes me want to turn off the television. Like if I'm 6'9" and I have someone guard me at 6'1", I'm not gonna waste bullets shooting from 30 feet out. I'm
Exactly.
I'm taking you 5 feet away from the basket, and I'm gonna treat you like a child. I'm gonna just hold the ball
Yeah.
over your head and toy with you and lay it up when I get ready. And
Yeah.
there shouldn't be anything you can do about it. And I hate it when LeBron settles for and Anthony Davis, because now we get to see him on a nightly basis. He settles for way too many jump shots. And I understand why now that I get to see him on a regular basis because it appears he doesn't have good lower body strength. He gets moved off the block way too easily. Um, but as far as the Lakers playing the Clippers in the future, it's a toss up. Uh, even though they beat the Clippers pretty well this last time, I'm not convinced because I don't see Avery Bradley hitting 5 threes again the next time they play. And I don't see him doing that 4 out of 7 games in a series. I don't. You don't know which player on a given night at the 2 spot for the Lakers will show up. Danny Green plays maybe once every 8 or 9 games. He will hit a shot and then he disappears. Avery Bradley will probably get in foul trouble or something, depending on who they're playing against. Rondo is not a shooter. Then they have Kuzma. You don't know what nights he's going to show up. So you still have no shooters on a team with 2 superstars who don't want to go to the basket in the closing minutes. And just from the history of basketball, you get in that last 3 minutes, you have to put your head down and go to the basket and try to get to the line.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go to big man land. You can't, if you settle for jumpers and you miss, unless you have Ray Allen or Paul Pierce or Reggie Miller out there, if you miss, you're going to go down 2 on the other end, and then 4, and then 6, and the game is over.
Mm-hmm.
Like the separation between the good teams and the great teams are the superstars.
Mm-hmm.
And the superstars are normally the players who at the last 3 or 4 minute mark can get to the basket and get to the line if they can't get a basket. That separates the great teams from the good teams. All the teams in the NBA are good, but they don't have that one player who can just go get it like the superstar teams do. And Lakers are not playing like they have superstars when you're settling for step back threes with 139 to go and you're down by 2. That's just not a good shot. So unless they continue to step up physically to the Clippers when they start getting pushed around, I think AD did a better job with Harold this last game because Harold punked him the first 2 games. I mean, he didn't want to go anywhere near the basket. But if he continues to toughen up and LeBron continues to toughen up against Beverly, I wouldn't mind them taking a technical foul to get them off of them like LeBron was about to with Beverly the last game. I was actually proud of that. Because I said, finally, he's throwing his weight around. Like, if that's going to be the difference of you winning and losing, take the technical foul. Like, even growing up when I played football, I'm like, if I late hit this quarterback and he gets hurt, and he's the star and I knock him out the game and I'm only getting a 15-yard penalty, I'll take the flag if we're going to win.
No, I'm ejecting
So,
you, just so you know.
Yeah, but we're going to
I'm
win.
ejecting you. No, but I'm ejecting you because you
I'm
put him out.
ejecting myself.
It's not just going to be 15, just so we're clear.
But case in point, the turning point is when Robert Ory hip checked Steve Nash out of bounds. Steve Nash was no longer effective. He was injured.
Right.
Phoenix was up in that series. They lost. So I guess Robert Ory had a championship hip.
Also, guys, did you guys see last night where Bron posted on Instagram his whole football thing where he was one of the top players out of Ohio and so forth? Did you see that?
I didn't see it.
I didn't see it.
But
Okay,
yeah,
I got a real story on that.
He talks about how he was one of the top players and this, that, and the other,
He
uh,
was.
and which he was. But if you got that football body, the first thing I thought was, how come you're not using it in basketball the way that you should? People talk about Giannis getting to the basket whenever he wants. So can Bron whenever he wants to. And it bothers me. Like, I've talked to people, the Clippers on paper, they better than the Lakers. Hurts me to say it, they better. If you go matchup for matchup, probably better. I believe Lakers have experience over the Clippers. I think our starting five is better, but I think their bench is way better and more accurate. But if the Lakers play the Clippers the same way that they played them this last game, I think they can handle it. It's all mental when it comes to playing those teams. You can't let like the Patrick Beverly get in your head and stuff like that.
Right.
And as long as you know the Lakers play, like I said, the way that they played this last game, I don't think the Clippers can touch them.
Okay, so about that LeBron and football story. I had the pleasure of interviewing LeBron down in D.C. And LeBron would lock down the locker room for me and you know this guy, AC Anthony Gilbert.
Yeah.
And in that interview, I was asking him about the greatest athletes of all time, which he should have been included. And he tells me the story about him being that football player. I was a little bit miffed as to why he was a tight end, but he was also the third string quarterback. They would bring him in to throw flea flickers, and he said he can throw the ball 60 yards in the air. At that time, Terrell Pryor was prominent at Ohio State, and I started to think about how the NFL would be changed if small forwards became quarterbacks. That physically they would dominate the league. I mean, could you imagine like a guy LeBron size or a guy Andre Drummond size becoming a quarterback? So, when he told me he would rather be the tight end and make the play down the field, I was a little bit disappointed. So it kind of speaks to your point about him not being physical as much as he should. Given his size and strength and his ability to get to the hole. My theory on the Lakers this year, and it encapsulates Kobe. Um, I think that the Lakers will be pressured daily. Once the league begins anew, to be forced to focus on the fact that Kobe is gone and how that incentivizes them to finish this. The night that LeBron passed Kobe was here in Philly. And Anthony Gilbert, again, my friend, was covering that game. And I asked him, why wasn't Kobe there? This was obviously the night before he died, right? So it was something, and for him to not be here, given that people are now calling him the greatest Laker, that's arguable. But I think that because he and LeBron began to be close in a sense, and everything in the aftermath of Kobe's death, that there's an extra incentive, and we saw that in that latest Clippers game. You saw the fire in LeBron's eyes that you don't normally see. When you see him kind of have like a stoic look on his face, he's able to be victimized. And I did not see it in that Clippers game. And I've covered LeBron extensively. I covered Kobe extensively, Olympics. Especially here in Philly. I call him Dr. J's grandson, Mike's son. Mike likes to say it's his brother because that's his ego speaking, but he's really his son. And it was. I think it's a direct lineage from Elgin Baylor to Connie Hawkins to Doc to Julius. To Julius and to Mike and Kobe. I think that Kobe, it was a natural emulation of Mike because his dad played with Doc and wore number 23. It's almost like it was destined for him to become the player that he was. And because LeBron left Cleveland, and I thought he was coming here, I was staunchly, perched on that he was coming here because the Sixers had the space. And when I interviewed Doc and Chuck, Doc told me that they would go out and get that prominent superstar. And I thought that it would be LeBron. I know that he was here, looking at schools for his son. And I thought that he would eventually be at Villanova and LeBron would be here in Philly and he would ultimately play alongside him in the NBA, which still might be a great possibility. The season, because of Kobe's death, I think is becoming more condensed. I think that the Lakers will have to perform daily because of Kobe's death. Seeing the 8s and the 24s in every arena that they play, they'll be constantly reminded of them. I had the Lakers beating the Sixers in the finals before the season started. I don't know if the Sixers have it because I don't think their coach challenges them enough. And I also don't think Joel Embiid's knee is 100% healthy. And that's the reason why we see him on a perimeter instead of him being the pivot force in the lane. And to be able to push players like Cat and Anthony Davis and Drummond and the rest of the centers off the block because of his gifted strength and also his dream and Patrick Ewing like moves. I'm very disappointed in the Sixers team. I'm not really as hard on Ben Simmons as most people are because I think that he is a strong candidate for Defensive Player of the Year and definitely first team all defense. So I think that because of that shot that Kawhi hit, that where Embiid and Simmons were trailing him, that gave Ben Simmons a way to focus on his defense. I don't think that Brett Brown is the guy because Brett Brown coached his father. There's too much of a family connection there to really challenge Ben to become the Hall of Famer that I think he will ultimately become because of his game. Okay. I mean, seriously, y'all, I don't follow the mainstream when it comes to anything in sports, basically because of what AC was saying about the humanity of it all. I don't see this criticism becoming such a trumpet as it has become because the Sixers are relevant again. And though 1983 was a long time ago, I think this team is on a fast track to at least qualify for the conference finals. I don't know if they will turn it on at the end of the season. They match up well against Boston because of the addition of Al Horford, and they play Milwaukee well. Miami is a problem for them. So I don't know if they could defeat Miami in 7 games because of, again, how Jimmy Butler would be incentivized to defeat the Sixers. If they don't have to play Miami, I think that they can push it through strictly on their talent. I don't think that Ben Simmons needs to be this jump shooter that everybody challenges him to be. He does everything else on the floor but that. He's improved his free throw shooting, which is imperative for the Sixers to move further in the playoffs. And, I'm just saying, I was starting to see a different player, But again, to go back to the Lakers, I hear what everyone is saying about them, but I think that the death of Kobe Bryant pushes them to the championship.
Word, word. Wow. Um, so for me, it's I try to take a step back and just look at the league as a whole, and it's great that when we can talk about the league as a whole, and who's good and who's not. When we talk about who's good, we can talk about the Lakers again. We've been talking about the 76ers for a few years now, so they've been relevant for a while. But the Lakers are relevant again. Um, the Clippers are relevant again. Milwaukee's been doing some damage. Excuse me. Um, I actually, if you look at my pick, you said you had Lakers and Sixers. I had Lakers and Milwaukee uh, prior to the season, and I didn't think that they would run away with their conferences like they have thus far. But it's looking like they're on a collision course. And I agree with Trey when he says that on paper, well, a lot of people agree with Trey that on paper the Clippers are better because many people have chosen the Clippers to win it all, and they still feel that way. And uh, this is not Laker bias that makes me laugh at them, but I just feel like, again, what Trey said, the experience that comes from some of the veterans on that team, excuse me, including but not limited to James Green and others that have been there and done that, actually won championships. I think that means a lot. Now Kawhi is I think the most dynamic player for me. He's the most dynamic player in the NBA today, and he's someone who, when it comes to work, I know about the load management, but when he comes to work, boy, does he work hard for 48 minutes at
Yep.
on both sides of the floor. And one thing that Rodney and I have talked about a lot is the fact that they call people two-way players now in basketball. And a two-way player is something that we heard in football, and it was someone who played offense and defense in football because
Right.
that's an anomaly, right? In
Yep.
basketball, you're supposed to play offense and defense,
Right.
right? So I don't. It's funny that that's now like it's weird for someone to go hard on both sides, but um, I still feel like it'll be the Lakers and most likely Milwaukee. But boy, would it be a great story if it were Philly that could break through. And I would love to see that matchup. But just overall, for me, I wonder when this all turns around and when the NBA comes back. If it really is June, how long? Like, do they play the full season at that point and then the full playoffs, or do they condense the season once they come back? It'll just be interesting. I do like the fact that they plan to come back because when you look at the NCAA, it's a completely different ball game, pun intended. We look at NCAA basketball, that's a winter sport. And with the NCAA winter, before they canceled the spring sports altogether, they canceled all of the winter tournaments and all of the winter playoffs. And then they ultimately canceled then they canceled the spring sports. So they basically canceled the rest of the NCAA. And so for me, I look at the UCLA Bruins softball, the number one team in the country when it all got shut down. And I was looking forward to UCLA softball likely going back to back as College World Series champions. But I look at my girl Dawn Staley rocking out at South Carolina.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
By the way,
Coach of the year.
she was coach of the year today. Boy, that team looked good. 26 wins in a row one loss on the season, 13 ranked opponents in that 26 game win streak. 13 of those are ranked opponents, and my Bruins on the basketball side are number 10 or were number 10, and they had an outside shot at a 2 seed, whereas a week before they had a shot at a 1 seed. But they're probably going to wind up as a 3, and I hope that they would do well. But I really feel like South Carolina was going to win on the women's side, and so I feel Dawn on that. It sucks that the season is lost. Now there are bigger things, but since we're talking sports, I definitely felt like South Carolina was going to get another championship. So this would have been 2017 and 2020. But what do you guys think about just the cancellation of the rest of the NCAA for the season? I mean, for the school year.
I think that it had to happen because the unforeseen is still uncertain. And I think that the aftermath of that is going to be a ripple that is going to change sports. Look at the seniors in high school that are coming in. And look at the seniors that will be affected in college. The people who redshirted, for that last season because of injury, and won't get a chance to play. The NCAA has a good chance here to rectify a lot of its past doings by allowing a lot of these players to come back for their bonus senior season. It's very unfortunate. I mean, you had so many great players, like Obi Toppin is a beast, and to not be able to see him do his thing in March Madness, it kind of changes history. I thought he was going to be almost like a Herald the Show Arsenal, except in a bigger version. I really thought that he was going to up his game offensively, in the tournament to be able to show the people how great he is. All these players that are being placed before him to be the prohibitive number 1 pick in the draft, I think that he was going to show a lot, as well as the players that are with him. I think that the camaraderie, if you will, of competition, changes things. And that's the reason why I was saying that I thought that the Lakers would win it all because of Kobe. But, to see these players not get the shot to really perform, they grow up since age 7, 6, 5, and thinking about hitting buzzer beaters in a tournament from all over the floor, and for them not to get that shot, I think it's going to be a twofold thing. It's going to have a negative impact on some players because they'll never be able to pick up a basketball again in such huge competition. But I think that a lot of them are powering up right now, working out individually, making their bodies even a little bit stronger so there'll be more of men once they get that shot, if the NCAA is rightfully smart to give them that opportunity.
So,
Yeah, I'll say I agree with Mezzo. It had to be done, but I'm also hoping that this is a wake up call to some of these young players not to take this postseason time for granted in an age where people are skipping bowl games and tournament games because they're more worried about their draft standing. And if they could jump from the 27th pick in the draft to 13 or 12, if they, just say, hey, you know what, I'm a rest on the regular season. I'm a, just sit out the rest of the year and work out with a trainer and make sure I'm ready for the draft. I hope this says, you know what, this is an enjoyable moment that you can never get back.
Right.
Where it'll kick somebody in the pants to say, I want to play. I'm glad the female players still play. I really wanted to see Ionescu from Oregon
Yes.
play some stiff competition outside of the Pac-12 this year. I was really waiting on seeing that, especially with the fact that she was so close to Kobe and she really wanted to play she was feeling really inspired to play after that. I really wanted to see her play on the big stage, um, and how that would play out. Um, but I hope it's a wake up call for all the sports, not just basketball, but football included. These guys are saying, "Oh, I'm skipping the Sugar Bowl. I'm skipping the Cotton Bowl. I'm just gonna sit back and wait for the draft." And everything now is based on your brand, which is one of those big issues I have with today's sports. It's like the money has gotten so big and out of control that it's more about the brand than the love of the game. So I hope that this will inspire some folks to love the game over again and say, no, man. Like, I was really proud when Zion Williamson came back after his injury last year. Even this year, he did it again. I'm glad Steph Curry came back, because they could have both said, hey, you know what? My check is already in the bank. I don't have to play. I can just wait till next year. And both, who are key players for their team, said, man, forget that. If I'm healthy, I want to be out there, whether we go into the lottery or whether we are sitting on the 10th spot trying to make a playoff spot.
Yeah.
So hopefully some of these younger players will say, I want to play. Because my mindset is everyone's not meant to be top 10. Everybody's not meant to be D1. So if you're skipping games because you're afraid you're going to get hurt and cost yourself some money, how much do you actually love the game? Because this is not where it's like this game really doesn't matter. We already got a playoff spot locked up, so I can just sit this out and be done with it. Or we got nothing to play for, and it's only 2 games left. Now that's different, but to skip a whole half of a season and you're healthy, um, you're not nursing an injury, you're 100% healthy. I have an issue with that. So I'm hoping that this particular time period actually allows people to see how much the game is missed.
Yeah.
I know I miss being out there. I mean, like, really, I would really be itching to be on a basketball court or a football field right now. And we can't.
Exactly.
Yeah, my spring sport is lacrosse, as far as officiating, and everything got canceled all at once, all levels, and it was like, oh, okay, wow. So it's not just not watching sports, but I have a sport that I work every season of the school year, fall, winter, spring, and nothing for the spring, and who knows how long all of this lasts. Um, yeah, it's been interesting, but I do hope that um, positivity comes for these student athletes from this hiatus, and it won't be positive for all, but I do wish the best for everyone. Um, yeah. Another interesting thing. Oh, somebody saying something?
Yeah, let me just bring this point in. To where Rob was speaking of, and these a lot of these players sitting down, not playing bowl games. I truly think that that is a reflection of the NCAA in general. How everybody from the college presidents, every other administrator, coaches were able to capitalize on capitalism, but the players. It's a shame that it's that the players now see themselves as a brand. But look back at the Will Chamberlains, the Dr. J's, the Larry Birds, the Magic Johnsons. The players who said that they only wanted to play on one team because of that team loyalty. There is no morality in sports.
This is zero.
And it has been shoved down our throats for years, that there is morality, but it is all about making money. I was very surprised that the NBA pulled the trigger to cancel this or suspend the season when they did, but it was imperative that they did, obviously. But you know, hopefully through all this, the NCAA really says to themselves, we can't go all in for ourselves in the event that we have to pay these players. And that's why I think that the NBA is really holding on to this purse that, they don't have to pay players, or they don't want to pay players, regardless of sports, and regardless of that sports influences on the various universities. The NCAA has to really look at itself truly and see that the cat's out the bag. You know, you have to incentivize these players based on their likeness. I've interviewed Ed O'Bannon multiple times. You know, me being Spencer Haywood's friend and knowing his whole story. Spencer was really one of my first big interviews, and to see how he's made these players now hundreds of millions of dollars based on his sacrifice. Him, Kurt Flood, and Ali were all at the Supreme Court at the same time. Um, you know, this is an NCAA problem. This truly is, and because of AC, you and I are in the media. We know how these things work. We know how teams have moles as journalists and only spit out what they need in almost a PR sense to make the NCAA money. Like the NCAA is the big dog for the media. It's not about the individual players, and regardless of how much we think that's about race or not, the NCAA really has to point the finger at itself, look in that mirror, as cracked as it is, and be able to, if there is morality, prove it. Prove it. And everyone shouldn't be generalized to be a student athlete. If some guy is like Zion, even Johnny Manziel, these players who are lightning rods and are able to um, make so much money for these institutions, then they should be, monetized and financially appreciated accordingly. It's as simple as that to me. And a lot of people like to say it's slavery and all this kind of things, and that's a metaphor to me, but it's accurate in a sense because of again, everyone else is making so much money. We know the whole thing about the Fab Five. I remember walking into a store when the Fab Five was playing and seeing all of their jerseys like featured. As you walk into the store, you see five jerseys, five Michigan jerseys, and I was hurt by that. I was like, how is that possible? You know, None of those players were receiving any of that money, and we know how Nike really started to build steam with Georgetown and UNLV, and it was just blowing out the water with the Fab Five. And look at it now, especially
Yeah,
with Oregon, you know, and this the obviousness of it all is the money should not be held up top. How it is for the majority of countries in this world. There has to be a time where all things are considered and all things are looked at equally. If it wants to continue in a real sense, instead of becoming like this fantasy for fans, it should be looked at as these dudes need to make money. I don't care if a player is 10 years old and he's starting for Duke, hypothetically. He should be able to capitalize on the attention given to him. It's not just about the talent, it's all of the money that's generated because that sports personality is on the floor. I'm sorry, I don't know what somebody was saying, but I just felt like I had to say that.
No, that
Oh no,
yeah,
no, no. That fits in. That fits in right. Because while I do want them to play, I do think they should get some kind of compensation. I mean, they don't even get medical past their 4 years, if I'm not mistaken, or whenever their eligibility or something like that is up. At some point they cut off from a lot of times from seeing, and maybe not all schools, but I know there are some where once they graduate or they've left to go to the NBA and maybe didn't get drafted, they want to come back and get a knee operation or something cleaned up. They are not allowed to do that. Um, they should be able to get some kind of benefits for helping, especially football, when they're getting that bowl money and they don't give it back.
right.
If something happens, like I always point to, I know, AC is a heated rival, but when I say USC, when Reggie Bush got in trouble, those
Cheaters,
Pac-12 teams didn't give that money back when they were winning
cheaters,
those bowl games.
Exactly.
Everybody,
cheaters.
so everyone got a piece.
Other
Uh,
than Michigan.
and they didn't give it back saying that he was ineligible. They kept that money in the coffers, and everyone popped up with a new building or new gym or something at the end of it. Uh, but
Listen,
except the players were hurt in the end. The teammates,
The
then
players,
the players that came after,
they lay
So
every play, they lay their career on the line. Every
yeah,
play, something could happen.
mm,
And for everyone else to benefit, but the players on the field or on the court or wherever they're playing, you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
it's just not right at all.
And there are different ways to do it. They can put it if they're worried about eligibility, they can put it in a trust until the 4 years are up. There are different scenarios where it can happen. Um, some people have a profit margin and they have an expected amount that they're trying to come up on, and I don't think they want to go under that.
Right.
And I don't think it's any different with large companies when, hey, are we going to cut our profit or are we going to lay some people off? Well, we want to keep making this money, so we're going to have to lay some of these people off if we want to stay at this amount that we're used to.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's any different with sports as far as college is concerned. Um, and, changes should be made. But, going back to my original point, I still want the players to have some love for the game and respect it and compete when they're able to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
okay, so you guys made me think of something, and I'm with it. I had many talks with Ed about this, even while we were on campus, because we were in school together. I mean, he was older, but we were there at the same time. Um, let's go back to 1991, and I want you guys to give me your true opinions of that game, um, if you will. Like, don't hold back. UNLV, Duke, 1991, not
Oh
1990,
my gosh. Oh,
1991.
oh man.
I want to talk about this because as a fan, as a basketball fan, And as a fan of this West Coast team that rocked in '90, and boy did 1991 hurt, and not just because it was against Duke, but that made it worse. But you guys know what I'm asking you. 1991 UNLV Duke. I think it's right in line with this conversation about players, NCAA players, and compensation or lack thereof. What are your thoughts?
I'm
I
gonna let
have
everybody
that
else go
video
first.
sitting right over here, and I refuse to watch it.
Oh, gosh, you and me both.
That's the one game I do not watch over again. It's sitting right here on the VHS, and I still can't stand it.
Man, I mean, see, as you were talking, all I saw was that phantom foul on Anderson Hunt. It 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 crushed me because we know what happened the year before. This team, won. Again, those Georgetown teams, the UNLV, they represented blackness. In the age of Indiana and Duke and North Carolina, even though North Carolina had more black players than the aforementioned, but you know, see, oh my gosh. So this has opened up all kinds of things for me because I hate charges. I hate charges. I despise charges. And the charge foul was implemented in the game by Bobby Knight and Mike Krzyzewski to stunt athleticism. Okay, so then we have UNLV. The Ackles and the Scurry and the rest of those players, the beast of Larry Johnson that we've seen now, that the evolution of him is Zion with Barkley and a little bit of Dominique in there, right? And for that team not to be able to complete its legacy because the NCAA was going after uh, Tarkanian. A couple weeks ago, I got his son's book in the mail, and I haven't sat down to read it yet, but I really want to read that because I know he probably is putting a lot of his father in that book, rest his soul, right?
Hmm.
You know, but just think about what happened after that. Then '92, Kentucky, you know, the Kentucky game, and then the Fab Five come on as freshmen and lose 72-52 to Duke. It was something like that, and then the next year, what happened with that North Carolina game, which if you really look at it, you'll see all kinds of anomalies, right? But to me, it started to become WWE in that '91 game, in my opinion, because you're a referee. You guys are both refs, right?
Mhm.
So you have the ability to blow that whistle at any time. And for that whistle to be blown on Anderson Hunt as such a perilous part of the game, because their soul was taken out after that, you know, and it felt like the soul of sports was starting to slowly but surely being seeped out of the game after that hurtful, you guys are AC. You said that you're a Dodger fan now. Rod, you said you're a Dodger fan.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a Yankees fan, and in 1980, when Ron Say and Garvey hit those home runs in the World Series, I cried like a little girl. The same the same way I cried when Magic won the championship on my floor. you know, and to see all of those games on tape delay, you know, all of those things, they became like the Lamar Jackson loss this year, the Cam Newton loss in the Super Bowl, even the Kaepernick loss in the Super Bowl. There needs to be like a push through or appreciation of blackness, in my opinion, for sports to become sane again. You cannot mask and continue to hide what is reality because old white men want to maintain white supremacy, regardless of talent and success. Lamar Jackson's being written off right now. And it started to me in that game. It was a crushing game because they were undefeated, and to see that team not be able to finish what it started. I'm seeing a towel being bitten right now. I'm hearing a crowd. The dunks and the noise that those two centers made after they dunks, and how that charged, the players, their teammates. Even going back seeing, the Todd Day and that Arkansas versus UNLV game, and how that gave basketball a sense of toughness. And even how Todd Day was looked at as a bad guy. I wasn't mad at Todd Day, man. It's a physical sport. Things happen. But to see that team be given so much and have to go through so much, and then for it to be taken from them on a foul that everybody will see as bogus, regardless of who you are. If you have eyes that are honest, you know that wasn't a foul. And as soon as that foul was called, they lost. And they didn't even get to the finals. It was Duke and Kansas. It was good for Grant Hill. He got to do that oop dunk that we will always see forever. So it was a twofold thing. But I hate Duke. I have written for so many editors, and they have asked me to back off of Duke because I hate Duke. I've interviewed Krzyzewski, and in the throes of all white reporters in the room, and how he would dismiss my questions. I know I don't ask any stupid questions. I never have. And for him to look me off and basically say, okay, Negro, you've asked enough. Let me move on to these guys who will simplify the question and not cause me to think, even though the perception of him is that he's an intelligent man. So I was trying to be aligned with that. And the interview is on YouTube. You can look it up. And that game, it's a wound that continues to be ripped open, and it has really taken a lot of spirit out of how I cover sports to the point where I'm becoming overly cynical and suspect of it all, based on a game like that.
For me, remembering back when I saw it, I said at halftime UNLV was going to lose.
Mm.
I could see the way that they were playing, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
they're giving this game away. I felt like they were giving the game away, not actually losing to a better team, but I felt like they were giving it away. When I saw Greg Anthony taking all of those shots, and Larry Johnson and Stacey Augman and some of those other players not getting involved, I'm like, this game is over. Because I know from the previous year, Danny Hurley was scared to death of UNLV. And I didn't see anything during the course of that season where I would say, okay, he's developing confidence. He'll be ready for UNLV. I saw nothing.
Right.
And then Greg Anthony picked up his fourth foul, and he's still telling Tarkanian, leave me in. And Tarkanian won't sit him, knowing that they have so many more minutes left in the second half. I'm like, what are they thinking about? Like, what is Greg Anthony thinking about? He's taking these chances
I think Jarvis last night, when he won, or did he start?
Last night was before them.
Oh, it was right before. Okay.
Yeah, it was Elmore Spencer. That's his name, the big 7-footer. They brought him off the bench, and then they brought a swingman, black kid, about 6'5", 6'6", off the bench, and then the young white guard. I forget his name. I really don't want to dig over his tape to be honest. But yeah, I'm like, Greg Anthony's taking way too many shots, and that's not their style. He's not the focal point of their offense. Like, there's, like when I watched it, I'm like, why is Larry Johnson not getting the ball? Who is Greg Kubek? Yeah. He was being guarded by Greg Kubek. That's how much I hate that game and remember his name. And I could put that on social media today, and nobody would probably remember who Greg Kubek was. He was guarding Larry Johnson. And Larry Johnson is not posting this dude up, and then at the end of the game, he shoots a 3. And I was so hot. But I could see it coming.
Yeah, I said Anderson Hunt by mistake. I meant Greg Anthony. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So that means that Anderson Hunt had to play point when Greg Anthony fouled out. Yeah. And Anderson Hunt was their primary shooter coming off a screen. So now you don't have your shooter available to open up the inside. And now you got Christian Laettner and Greg Kubek, and Brian Davis triple team in the post.
Oh my gosh.
They did nothing down there. And so I'm like, man, I cannot believe this. Like, they just beat them by 30, and now they're down by 4. It's big in the game. When you let a weaker team hang around towards halftime or deep into the second half, more than likely, from what I've seen through history, that weak team is going to end up finding a way.
They got the confidence. I'm seeing Bobby Hurley drive through the basket and get to the cup. I'm like, oh my, how? With the amoeba.
Yeah. Greg Anthony couldn't guard him. He was in foul trouble. He had to keep his hands in his pocket.
Yeah.
And stayed in the game. And Tarkanian would not take him out. I mean, like, at least sit him for 2 or 3 minutes and see, what can happen if you guys don't go down by 10 or 12. Leave him on the bench and try to buy time. But you leave him in there, he fouls out, game, set, and match. So for me, and I was the biggest conspiracy theory, especially at that time, theorist, I should say. I'm like, oh, they threw this game. Like, I never really considered, even back then, I never considered the refs. I'm like, I see what they normally do, and they're not doing it. They're giving this game away.
Mm-hmm.
Even if some of the calls are questionable, they're playing into it by not playing how they play.
Facts.
So, I saw that with a lot of Duke games, especially if you came in the Cameron Indoor. I see it on the high school level now, and the college level. Certain coaches, some officials get scared to death to blow that whistle because it's like, I don't want to make him mad. Mm-hmm. I might not be working ever again. So, they get nervous. They blow a foul that they don't see, or they will miss a foul that they saw clearly because, I don't know, the ghost of Jim Boeheim or Krzyzewski or somebody is tapping him on the shoulder. I don't know what it is. But I know that, officials, just like players, just like coaches, get nervous, and some of them can't handle that type of pressure. That's a fact.
Perspective.
And so when some people say, well, hey, how did the ref blow that, or how did he miss that? He may have just been scared. He may have seen it completely and just been scared to death. to blow the whistle based on who was on that sideline or
Mm-hmm.
based on him handling that moment at that time. You know, like I'm sure AC knows that we can work with some people where you have to kind of talk them off the ledge. Like, dude, step it up.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Um, because if the coach says something to them, they're shook for the rest of the night, and you have to talk them through it and say, hey, look, we still need you in this game. You can't check out right now. That play was that play. Get over it. Get back in it. And it's just like players who miss shots. I was watching the Ron Artest Ron Artest story last night, and they talked about how Ron Artest would get so down on himself after a mistake, you know, and then his girl said he would come home and tell her he's trash, he's terrible, he kept turning the ball over, he couldn't hit a shot, he doesn't know what's wrong with him, he's not a good player. And, you know, she'd be like, let it go. And, you know, they said he came to the Lakers, and the first thing Kobe did is said, look, knock all that stuff off. You mess up, move on, play ball, or don't play with us. Because Kobe says you're replacing a guy in Trevor Ariza who I looked as a brother to. Like, we did everything together, and you're coming in taking his spot. So I expect you to bring the same kind of effort and to bring the same kind of mentality. And Ron said that changed him as a player. I mean, along with his mental therapy, but
Yeah.
it was Kobe telling him, let that stuff go. Like, the game is not over. We have to keep playing. So, you know, some of these games that I look at now that I saw back then, where back then I thought it was the refs, along with, you know, most fans who a lot of times don't know the rules. Now I see it sometimes a little different, where I say, what is that team thinking about? Um, you know, and you brought and Mezzo, you brought up Arkansas, the 40 minutes of hell, and I still have that video sitting over here against UNLV.
Mm.
And I think I told you, AC, after watching that game, that was probably one of the hardest games to officiate that I've ever seen, with
Yeah.
so much going on, with so much physicality, with all of the hotheads on one floor. Oliver Miller, Todd Day, Lee Mayberry,
Mayberry.
uh,
Darnell Robinson.
Greg Anthony, who was Darnell Robinson, Greg Anthony, who was Mr. Trash Talk himself, Anderson Hunt, who was a trash talker, Larry Johnson was a trash talker, and they are woofing and talking crazy and pushing each other and giving hard fouls the whole game. And, and I'm like, wow, this is like Rucker Park, organized Rucker Park at
With
its
no
finest.
refs. Yeah.
Yeah, but the refs actually let them play through a lot.
Yeah, they did.
All
They
right.
let them play through a lot.
I want to go back to the UNLV thing. I don't want to lose this topic. Trey hasn't had a chance to talk yet. So for me, I watched the game one time. I watched it when it was happening, March 1991. I have my opinion about it. I'll go back and watch it someday. But in my opinion, and these are some of my favorite players, all of them. Like I, Ryan. So you talk about important stuff, Mizzo. You're talking about uh, culture, right? You're talking about how the the culture of black basketball players in the NCAA maybe um, negatively influenced some to repel them. Possible, possible. However, when I look at the season of 1991, I believe that even on your worst day, of 1991, you don't put yourself in a position to be affected by the officials like that. One or two calls. I, in my opinion, and again, much respect to them for all that they did. They threw that game, and I watched it one time, and maybe it wasn't everybody who threw the game, but boy, was that disappointing for me. And I've gone the last uh, 29 years believing, because we're just about at the anniversary of it now, the 29-year anniversary, believing that they threw it. I will go back soon now that somebody brought it up today. I'll go back soon and look at it again. And I'm not a kid anymore, and I was when it happened. Well, I was a senior. I'll look at it again and see what's what. But I don't believe that they gave their all, and
Agree. I
I
agree.
believe that they were. I used to always say I hope they got enough. I hope they were paid enough to walk away from that back-to-back championship.
Yeah,
What you got on it, Trey? Before we
yeah.
get to the closeout.
And I'm like you. I watched it, just the one time, and yeah, man, it was kind of devastating watching that happen just right in front of you. Just I can still remember it, because it was so effective, man, and just like Ryan said, a team that you played before and you beat by 30 easily, it shouldn't be within 4 as the game is close, and shots weren't taken, and it was just a bad situation, man, and I didn't really understand it then. But listening to all the conversations these past 29 years, I want to kind of go back and dissect the game and really watch it and see it in front of me, the way that everybody explains that it went on. But just watching it live, man, it wasn't pretty at all.
I can't watch it. I know y'all want to watch it. I
No,
can't
I don't
watch it.
want to. I don't want to. I'm just thinking I might see something else,
But
like something that I missed the first time. Like maybe they didn't throw it, but I believe they did, and it's too painful to go back to.
this is also a short time after Hank Gathers died.
Yeah.
There was so much emotion in college basketball at the time. I think was that the year that Laurel Marymount was, I think UNLV beat them by 30 or 50, like a 150 to 100 or something like that in the tournament, or something
Yeah, it was
crazy.
they played. I think they played Loyola Marymount, Ball State, and Georgetown before
Yeah,
they played Duke. Right?
yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
had some squads then.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it was so emotionally charged for me. I hate that Bo Kimball and them had to play. I mean, that
Right.
UNLV had to play Bo Kimball and them. Like I
Yeah,
was really pulling for LMU to get as far as possible, and I was like, man, that's what y'all do. Y'all pit them against each other. Um,
right.
because the local LMU's down the street. I mean, it was further away then because I mean I lived 95th and Hoover then, but I'm just saying like that's LMU was down the street. Oh no, I was in Fox Hill, so it was literally down the street. LMU was down the street, and then UNLV was up to 15. So I I felt connected to them, and then Stacey Augman was from the area, so yeah, it was just one of those things. Yeah, it was tough. So no, I don't want to see it, Mike. I'm just feeling like maybe I've been wrong for the last 29 years. I don't believe I have been,
no, I
but
think I don't. I think you're right. I truly think that you're right. I mean, me, taking it all in. I like to be a rational guy when it comes to things. So hearing, you know, y- your all's opinions about this, I mean, it's given me a different perspective. I do think that foul call was wrong, but like you said, they should have never been in position to have that foul being called.
yeah,
It's almost like I remember I was talking to Chris Webber. And we're talking about that 90, I think it was 90, whatever they when it's 72-10 that year at the Bulls and Washington
Mhm.
when they had Howard and Weber and Rashid and Ben Wallace and all them dudes. Um,
93.
yeah, I'm talking about the Washington, the Wizards squad that took the Bulls in every one of those three games. Back then it was the best 3 of 5 in the first round, and
Yeah,
they took the Bulls to every single one of the end of every single one of those games. But Weber was talking to me about how he was when you're a big man, when you get those two fouls in almost like the first 2 minutes of the game, it really neutralizes you for the rest of the game, and that's something he was saying to me. Without him saying that the league is fixed or whatever, or kind of partial to the Bulls and for them to complete that season. He was saying that the foul calls on me were kind of tough early because Washington really, I mean, the Bulls really didn't have anything for him and Howard in those games. Um, so, looking back on it all, I'm starting to see a bigger picture of that. But I really do think that it has a lot to do with how Tarkanian, in a sense, was an entrepreneur, right? He was really trying to change the way basketball is played and also recruited and whatever else. But we know about Sweet Pea and everything else that happened after that and whatever. But Tarkanian was a monster. He was almost. I compare Tarkanian to Big House Gaines in a sense because they were so iconic. And they were so different than the rest of their peers that the NCAA was like, "Whoa, we gotta pull the reins on this dude a little bit." And that's not absolving him of wrongdoings because we would be remiss to think that Tarkanian was squeaky clean, you know. But in a sense that when I analyze people who have that perception, you also have to analyze the NCAA and their misgivings as well that are painted as angelic wrongly.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
yeah.
Well, gentlemen, what we're going to do now is go to the part of the show where we have what's called the closeout. And for the closeout, each one of us will basically give our final thoughts. And so what I want you guys to do is each one of you give something that you want the audience to know in your closeout, but also tell me who your NBA Finals pick, your NBA champion. No, you can give me NBA Finals. Who you think? No, I want the pick. Who's gonna win? Give me that encompassed in your closeout. Rodney, you can go first.
Closing out, man. I hope this virus gets corrected. I hope that we get a chance to see a lot of these players uh, showcase their talent. Especially there's so many who are on the borderline of every year they're they're not highlighted throughout the regular season, but they get a chance to do something special in the postseason, and they all of a sudden are on somebody's radar to get that shot to get to the league. So hopefully we get a chance to see that. NBA Finals, I thought from the beginning it would be the Clippers and Boston, and I'm probably just stay on that. As much as I always say every year, Philly is the most talented squad. When I see them play, I feel like I'm looking at a bunch of 12-year-olds. Like, they have to get organized
Yes.
because skill wise, they don't have anyone who should stop them ever with that squad. Especially with adding Tobias Harris. They shouldn't have anyone who can stop them, and they start to get disorganized, and so I never picked them to go to the finals because of that. Um, but you don't know what Philly you're gonna get because one night they can look like the world champs, and the next night they could look like something you don't want to see. So
So who's your
I'm
pick? Who's your pick?
I will say Boston to win
Okay,
it.
you're not all right. We just kicked you out of LA. Go ahead. This dude got we trying. The Lakers are trying to catch him, and you trying to give them another one. And I didn't know you're the only one in
Man,
the world. You're the only one in the world
trust me.
outside of Smart picking the Celtics. Come on, man. What you got, Mizzo?
I'm just being realistic. They couldn't do anything with Kimba Walker, and they didn't play against Kimba the second time.
You okay? Now, all right. Well, I'm gonna get Marcus Johnson on here as a guest, and he's gonna let you know that you forgot about somebody when you jumping straight to Boston. You might have forgotten about the number one seed. What you got, Mizzo?
You know, when Kobe was in his prime, I got to cover him extensively. You know, Anthony Gilbert. I bring up his name a lot because I give him credit for bringing the video camera, the handheld video camera, into the NBA locker room. It was taboo of us to do this. You know, a lot of the PR guys would frown upon us when we did this. You know, we like to take their pics of their sneaks in their locker and anything that could advance the culture. You know, so basically what we would do when Kobe, LeBron, Dwight Howard, Melo, and Wade would come east, we would track them from New York all the way down to DC, and we would basically do a 4-part interview with these players. You know, in DC, there was a tunnel from the locker room to this lobby that leads to the bus. So we would, you know, bring another friend of ours named Jeff Young, and he would record us walking and interviewing the aforementioned.
Uh-huh.
I got a real chance to get to know Kobe, and it is a weird thing to almost think that he almost saw this, because his sense of urgency was incredible. I remember talking to him in Manhattan pre the Olympics, and again the interviews on YouTube, where I tried to ask him about how would you challenge what is already a superior talent, through the Olympics. I asked LeBron about this. I asked all those dudes about that before Beijing. And Kobe said something profound. He's like, "Look, I only stay in a moment. There's no time for reflection. I stay in a moment and learn from the moment. I got to learn from him that it was not Michael Jordan that gave him the turnaround, and Spencer Haywood. I also got to know that his spin move came from Black Jesus, Earl Monroe, and how that became Barry Sanders' spin move in football, and how his appreciation for Will Chamberlain, Sonny Hill, playing in Sonny Hill League, and how he became rough and tough. He always would tell me that, he wished that the NBA would regain its toughness more than anything. He's very assertive in that point. Whenever I talked to him, he saw like where the league was going. And I think Rod brought it up about, jacking up threes, and the game has become soft, but Kobe was brilliant. He was supremely brilliant. And I don't think that perception of him when he was playing was as prominent as it should have been. He basically told me that he saw the floor as a grid. So the blocks in a grid, he would dissect them, and that's where he would take, like that jumper 8 foot from the rim that he would bank off in the backboard. He did that repetitively, and being worldwide, in Italy, and getting those Magic Johnson tapes, and he was studying his dad and Mike and Doc, and all of the things that made him the incredible phenom that he was, based on him being the wonder kind, the kid, basically the boy wonder, and to see him, mature after Colorado, fall back in love with his wife, because there was a lot of stories out there about Kobe and infidelity. even before Colorado, but it wasn't like he was in the clubs all the time and stuff like that. He did really study his craft. And, I have many interviews with him, and I've watched them over, and it's almost eerie. It's eerie to see him say the things that he was saying almost as if he was speaking to the future. The whole thing how he was preparing, Gianna for not only stardom but superstardom in the WNBA, and almost like a Cheryl Miller wasn't there since, and I really gained a profound respect for this guy because he and LeBron did something that was very uncommon for black journalists. They would shut down the locker room for us. And to the point where, especially when we were in DC, the Washington Post guys would be like, who are you working for? How are you getting these exclusive interviews with these players? They knew that they had to speak to the true culture. I call it Soul Rock Soul, the true culture of black basketball. And to be able, because they knew that we were going to write it right, not in a almost like a pre-social media sense like it is now. The Stark of the last decade was disgusting to me, and they knew that they could give basketball a true sense of history by responding to the points that we were really trying to make. Talking about Kobe being a Philly cat. A lot of my peers at the time were saying he ain't from Philly. We used to watch Kobe in Philly. Watch Kobe against Chester High and Chester, Pennsylvania. At the Palestra in the tournament. And seeing that he was given everything that the fans and his competition could muster to break him down, and how that in '96 became his introduction to the NBA. I don't think that I can write my piece on Kobe yet. I'm not mentally there yet. I started with a piece called The Third Evolution that was Doc. Remember I was talking earlier about the evolution, Connie, Elgin, Connie, Doc, Mike and Kobe. I can't write that fifth evolution piece on Kobe Bryant yet because he's gone. You know what I mean? I don't think I'm healed yet enough to write that piece. I know it's something I have to write. I probably have, I don't know, 5 or 6 pages of quotes from him. That I'll be able to really speak to him. Both analytically and personally. But I'm just not there yet. Rest in peace, my brother. The game misses you. We all miss you because I know what you gave to black journalism. And the perception of you is a little bit different than most will speak about. But he really looked out for us, and I appreciate him for that. Again, I said that I thought that the Lakers would win the championship upstairs, and I'm gonna stick to Lakers and Sixers. I'm really gonna stick to that. No, it's upstairs. That's mine.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Oh, my bad.
Yeah, and yeah, and I just think that because of the death of Kobe Bryant, the Lakers will have everything they need to push through and win it. Before that statue was erected at Staples for Kobe and his daughter.
Yeah.
Wow. Powerful. Trey. Oh, yeah. Okay. Trey.
Yeah. All right. First, I just want to pray for everybody that's send my prayers out to everybody that's affected by this COVID-19, man. And, listen to your mayors, stay inside, take care of your bodies. we might be all in great health, but we got to think about our elders as well, and something they might not be able to overcome. So listen to your mayors, man. Stay out the street, stay home, enjoy the time with your family. Uh, Learn your family. It's not much time that we get to just sit in the house with our family for 30 days. We might not ever be able to do that again in our lifetime. So, take that time, man, and enjoy it. I'm enjoying it. Just seeing my kids grow every day, all day. I noticed that all teachers need a raise. We pick our kids up every day and ask how our kids were, and they say, "Oh, they were great. They were this. They were that." No, they not. They're really not. They're not, man. But I'm just trying to bring a little light to this, tough situation that we're going to. So, I pray for everybody to be safe. On to the NBA, man. At the beginning of the season, I never one time thought the Bucks could come out of the East. The Bucks remind me of that Dallas Maverick team that got ran out the building by Baron Davis in the playoffs. You can beat them you can come in and they can win one game, but in a 7-game series, I do not see them getting it done.
Mm-hmm.
I said Lakers in Boston at the beginning of the season. I got a couple of friendly bets with my friends that said that the Clippers were going to be out there and the Clippers were going to have a better record than the Lakers. I thought Vegas was crazy when they said the Lakers over-under was 49 games. I thought Barkley was crazy when he said the Lakers was going to be a 4 or 5 seed in the league. But
and those were both crazy. You're right about both of those.
I was like, do they not know? But I thought it was going to be Lakers-Boston, but a huge underrated player, I think, by some. They let Morris Sr. get away. And I think he was huge for Boston.
Yes.
And I think since he's gone, I don't think Boston was as tough as they were. And I think Philly's going to come through and, come out of the East. But I think the Lakers is too big, man. Lakers too big. Lakers too big. And I know people have talked about JaVale McGee, and I'm probably going to open up a can of worms because people have their thoughts or whatever. I still think JaVale McGee, and always have, since he's been in the league, other than when he was on Shaqtin' a Fool, is a top 5 center in this league. And since he's matured and was on that Golden State Warriors team and played with vets that have got him to perform the way that he should, he's been in right situations. Look how he's producing with Golden State. He's a voice in that Laker locker room now. You know what I mean? And he plays and he brings it all the time. But having JaVale, having Dwight, having AD that can get up and down the court, still play center, and Bron, when he wants to play big, I think the Lakers going to bring it home, man. I really do. So,
Right. All right. Well, so then I'll say that clearly 3 of us know what we're talking about on this podcast. I'm not sure what happened to Rodney. I don't know. He got replaced by somebody. So I watched the evolution of Ben Simmons leading up to the NBA and became intrigued by that guy. And I would really like to see them break through. I cheered for Toronto to break through last year largely because of Kawhi. I'm a big Kawhi fan, but I'm also a realist. And while I cheered for him to break through and Toronto to break through last year, I really don't know where Rodney's head is. He not only has them over the Lakers, but then he has the Celtics over them. I don't know. So we'll go 3 out of 4 here, and I'll go Lakers over Philly with the two of you, and then we'll just chuckle at Rodney because neither of those teams will be in the finals. Um, and honestly, Rodney doesn't want the Celtics to win as a Laker fan, so he really does believe this, and so I'm not sure. Maybe he's watching it, uh, watching games through his Android phone. I don't know, but his judgment is definitely clouded. So I don't know, but so I got the Lakers for my closeout. Um, Again, I have South Carolina national champs, women's basketball, UCLA national champs, softball. It won't happen. It's all speculation. Um, so when I talk about the interviews that I did with Dave Stewart and Tony Gwynn during that World Series run, I think that the Dave Stewart one probably meant more to me because I was a big Dave Stewart fan. I wasn't such a big Tony Gwynn fan, but the Tony Gwynn fan is uh, more impactful now because he's gone. Um, and I didn't have this interview with either of these interviews with either of them until I was an adult. But Tony Gwynn still had an impact on the remainder of my life after I met with him. And so I met him I think 4 hours before game time at the field, and I asked him, why we were there so early, and he said, "Well," he said, "you see me, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I see you." And he said, "I've done well for myself, but I'm not super gifted athletically. So how do you think I've achieved the things that I've achieved? By outworking everyone." Wow. He said, "I've outworked everyone since the day that I got on a court or on a diamond. Um, and I don't want to stop now just because I've got a name. I still have to work hard. I have to work harder than everyone so that I can outwork everyone." And I just thought that was so amazing. Like he's clearly a future Hall of Famer at that point and in the World Series, and he's still showing up before everybody. And I got a chance to be on the field with him during his workout because we were the only ones there. And it was just great. I mean, there was some team personnel there, but no players in Qualcomm State. I mean, in Qualcomm. It was amazing. Um, and one of the things that he shared with me, and I've used this piece of trivia quite a bit throughout the years. So now those of you listening can use it. Who's the only player in sports history to be drafted by two different teams in the same city on the same day? Two pro teams in the same city on the same day, and it's him, and it's the San Diego Clippers and the San Diego Padres. And I asked him why he chose baseball, and he said, "I had some talks with some people that I look up to in both sports, and I felt like I could have there was more longevity in baseball for me, for my body." And I was like, wow. And I don't know, I don't remember how many years he played, but you can't say that basketball would have been the wrong decision, but you can say baseball certainly was the right decision for Tony Gwynn. So I was glad to get that time with him before he passed, and I was glad that he imparted that insight on me. Pretty amazing. Um,
Wow.
Nearly as amazing as spending the last nearly 2 hours with you guys. So I want to thank you all for joining us on the first edition of the Collective Podcast. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Mizzo. Thank you, Rod. I appreciate you all. Talk to you guys episode 2.
All righty.
All right.
Appreciate it.
One love.
Later,
Peace.
fellas.
See ya.